Hello and welcome to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. My name is Nathalie Himmelrich. How to Deal with Grief and Trauma is completely self-funded, produced and edited by me, Nathalie Himmelrich. Consider making a small donation to support the podcast. Go to bit.ly/support, capital G, capital T, and podcast. I repeat, bit.ly/supportgt podcast. Thank you so much. And for more information, please visit Nathalie's website, join the podcast Instagram page, and subscribe to the newsletter to receive updates on future episodes. Welcome back. If you're returning, I'm glad you're here. And if this is your first time finding this podcast, I'm glad you're here too. My name is Nathalie Himmelrich, and this is How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. A space where we don't look away from grief and trauma, where we sit with it and question it, understand it, and slowly, sometimes very slowly, find our way through it. And I hope you will find your way through it. So season 18 begins today. Before I tell you what's coming this season, I want to share something that happened to me last week. I was sharing it in my newsletter, so if you're not yet on the newsletter, make sure that you sign up, and you can do that with the link in the show notes. And first of all, I wasn't sure if I wanted to talk about it publicly, but I spoke to a medium. Now, whatever you're thinking right now, I get it. I had probably those same thoughts somewhere along the line. Maybe skepticism, maybe some curiosity, maybe something deeper you're not ready to name yet. I had seen a medium before, so my preconceptions or my own walls were very low because I have personal previous experience with it. And what came out of this new conversation, now almost 15 years after my two significant losses of my mother and my daughter, surprised me. And not necessarily in the ways that I was expecting or that you might expect. But I'm not going to give it all away in this trailer. This is too short for that. But what I want to tell you is this. I walked away with something, a clarity, a question, a shift, however small, and a thought that I want to share more about this on the podcast. So I reached out to the medium, and she's going to be a guest on the podcast. And you'll hear her later, maybe this season, maybe next. We'll see. So season 18 is a season of a range. So there will be solo episodes, just me, working through something with you. And so one of those episodes, which I already recorded previously, looks directly at the preconceptions we carry into grief, how we deal with grief and trauma. The stories we've been told about how it should look, how long it should last, when we should be over it, this is one of the words, those invisible rules that nobody handed us directly, and yet somehow we absorbed them. And we're going to examine those carefully. In another episode, I draw a line, or rather I try to, between the beliefs we hold and grief and trauma. Between the frameworks we use to make sense of the world, whether they are religious, spiritual, philosophical, and the way those frameworks shape how we deal with grief and trauma, how we recover or how we are allowed to recover, and how we get stuck. So this one goes deep. And then there are all my guests. This season I've brought voices from around the world, from Australia, Europe, the United Kingdom, the United States. These are people in different circumstances, different cultures, different relationships to loss and trauma, and to the people who they try to hold through it. Some are people who have grieved, some are people who had trauma, some had both, and some are people who support others who grieve. And most of them are actually both. So what I keep finding, no matter where someone is from, is that grief and trauma is not as private as we think it is. It lives in community. It lives in the stories we share, or the ones we don't. And this season explores that. So here's what I ask of you as a listener. If this podcast has supported you, tell me. There's a send us a text link in the show notes of every episode. Tap it, write to me. Tell me what landed, what helped, what you need that you didn't find, what questions you're carrying, and what you'd want explored. Because I read those messages. I actually look forward to those. And they matter to shape this podcast. And if you never left a rating or a review, this is the moment. It takes less than a minute. And it is the single most effective way to make sure that this podcast finds the people who need it. Grief and trauma are isolating experiences. A 5-star rating can put this show in front of someone sitting alone who didn't know this community existed. Share an episode with someone, not because it's convenient, but because you know it might reach them at their right time. And subscribe if you haven't already, so you'll never miss an episode as the season unfolds. So season 18 is about what we carry, what we've been told to carry, what we're allowed to put down, and what we find when we stop pretending we have it figured out. It's about the women in Australia, or the people in the UK, and the therapists in the US, and the researcher in Europe, all of whom showed up and told the truth. And it's about you, wherever you are, whatever you're holding. So let's begin. Thanks for listening to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. If you'd like to be updated on future episodes, please subscribe to my newsletter on nathaliehimmelrich.com. If you need grief support, please contact me for a 30 minutes free discovery session. How to Deal with Grief and Trauma is produced and edited by me, Nathalie Himmelrich. To support this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe to or follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you. And remember to keep breathing. I promise it will get easier.